There's different ways of looking at the value of it, because the primary supporter of the work is Asian gentleman, a large extended family, interesting history on his own, but his wife is now a big fan because we've been really good with weather. I mean, I'm kind of pleased with that. And we gave her some indications that there was some nasty weather heading towards her area in which she lived at the time in Australia. Oh. They were due to move anyway, but she accelerated their move by about 6 weeks. And they left 2 weeks before torrential rainstorms ended up leaving over 7 feet of water in her house.
Wow.
In the house she had recently sold.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, the person who bought it, of course, fully insured and everything.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But the wife of my client is in her late 50s and has also had a hard life, and she feels grateful at least that she did not have to suffer through that.
Let's say you are doing one of the runs, and I know you're doing it for specific individuals who are the ones paying for it. But in the runs, Cliff, you come up with a lot of ancillary information, such as what you just told us.
Oh, correct. Okay. Because to a certain extent, we want to run in what we call serendipity mode and allow the language to develop on its own.
Yeah.
As opposed to hunting for specific word groups, which again gets back into that deterministic mode.
Wow. Some questions that people have, because as soon as they know you're going to be back on with us, I start to get questions from all over the world. And one that seems to be very prevalent, and it may even have a direct indication of what you're picking up, is this potential bird flu epidemic or pandemic. Have you picked up much about that?
I want to say that we've had disease issues arise that were shown a very large emotional weight, but the way in which the process works, the nature of the disease is somewhat hidden from us. We've had a very curious reference, though, to a disease state that's going to cause some problems that we've got to qualify by saying that it's sun-related.
Sun-related?
As in, the solar system, sun, the big scary ball in the sky.
Yeah, now, like skin cancer or something like that.
Well, no, because see, there's the rub. The immediacy values are all wrong for something like that.
Okay.
It's going to have a much higher immediate impact. We see it as from the language as being something that could spread potentially or impact a lot of people very suddenly, such that a huge network of caregivers must arise in order to provide some relief to these individuals.
Okay.
Okay, now, one could say in a lot of different ways that bird flu fits because of migratory bird patterns being solar influenced, and we've had those kind of suggestions arise. Our work, I don't trust it when we get down to those levels of details, because what we have to do in order to get down to this disease is to drop out of our mathematic overlay on the conversations done into the conversations themselves and then sift for words. And once we start getting in too deep to that, then we're back into the conscious mind.
Okay.
And also at that point we could be spoofed or any number of things. And we qualify our interpretations by I don't want to say anything close to a reality check, but because we're becoming more and more outlandish in the stuff we're seeing, but nonetheless in a probability sense. So the very first time, for instance, that George, you're at Urban Survival, and I had a conversation, I told him about this screwy idea I had and this weird technology. And he said, well, you're crazy. And I said, yeah, but it doesn't make me wrong. And
it sounds like George, doesn't it?
It sure does. Oh, yeah. He was very gracious about it, though. I've got to give him that. Okay. And he stuck with me, and we made a little projection. Yeah. And this was back on, like, July 4th or 12th or whatever of 2001, and we put some time frames on it. Yeah. And then one very horrific day, I got a phone call from him saying, well, could this be it? And, of course, I was standing there watching the planes crash into the towers. And what we'd actually said was there was going to be some kind of a big emotional upset that had all of these issues around it and involved potential for a military accident because, of course, we weren't modeling terrorism.
Right.
I was never even thinking that way. I was coming from a commercial viewpoint, so I had all kinds of words not in our lexicon. And it did its best to describe the situation to me, and George had to grant that we were fairly close, given the circumstances, and given the limited lexicon that we had, because at the time I think maybe I had the initial Oxford English Dictionary of 180,000 English language words, many of which I had yet to even go through and assign emotional values to.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Jeez.
we've been able to get sort of okay with it, but I don't like dropping down into details again, especially these days, because since shall we say, since turning into the new century, things have gotten a little weird.
In what way?
Well, all kinds of patterns are seriously accelerating. For instance, just take one, the UFO issues.
Right.
So the difference between 1999 and any year in the new century is a factor of reported number of UFO sightings is a minimum distance of 10 to 1.
10 to 1 more going on now.
Correct. Ever since hitting the year 2000, where before we would see reports of 150 sightings, now we're getting 1,500 from that same locale.
My gosh.
And it's in many cases much greater than that. In some cases we're seeing, thousands of sightings where before there were dozens.
So, like primarily Mexico City or all
No,
over?
BC, Canada, Finland, China,
Jeez.
India, Kashmir, Pakistan, Iran, that's a big hotspot. Israel, Tierra del Fuego, Brazil, almost all the countries you can think of. So far, I don't know of any specific spot that hasn't had any. We're even seeing them in Vanuatu and Seychelles, Maldives.
All except here in the U.S.
No, we get a lot here too.
I know, but we're not. It's not reported.
Correct.
Jeez, unbelievable. What about? And I don't know if you even want to mention it, but I know that the last two runs you have been picking up one word, and it gets more and more. I don't even know if I should say it without asking you first.
Go ahead. I mean, anything that's in there can become more or less public knowledge, and anybody that knows how to pry has probably already seen it. Reptilian. Yeah, we're picking up a lot of that. If you examine the nature of how language clusters, we find something really interesting, and that is that passion equals creation in a new language, if you want to think of it that way. Okay. So, and it also, passion equals the assignment of new emotional attributes to language. So if one really wanted to learn where American language is heading, they would go watch Black Entertainment Television 106 in Park, because that's where all the new slang's coming out, and that's where the new emotional attachments are being put on it. Wow. What is going to persist out of that over time is anybody's guess, but that's the bleeding edge of language for, if you will, the television audience America. But then there's a whole other America. That other America finds itself concentrating on all different kinds of ideas, most of which, as I stated before, have been deliberately flavored with emotional overlays to keep people from discussing them. One of the things, of course, is UFOs. We know factually that the U.S. Air Force spent a lot of time discounting and debunking and in dealing with individual stories, but in the whole, if one looked at their activity, they were laying down a layer of myth over the UFO phenomena in all respects, such that no matter what part of the curtain you're pushing on, you'd find another layer of curtain. All of the emotional aspects of those curtains were to discourage you from going further. Jeez. A fair assumption, wouldn't you think?
My gosh, yes. Just look around us. But where and why would the phrase or the whole idea of reptilians come in? Why would that be a concept and or a word that seems to be becoming more and more prevalent in your runs?
That's a real good question.
And you don't have the answer, or you're not going to tell me?
I don't know that I know the answer. I mean, obviously there's one layer of an answer, and that is that for whatever reason, it's percolating out now. Okay. But again, it's also like, why do we get seemingly warning about weather? Let's look at our psychic leakage theory, right? Yeah. I'm sure everybody at some point, or many people in some point in their lives have run across somebody who's, can scratch their knee, probably himself and say, ooh, bad weather's coming. And whatever reason, that particular old codger has a sense and can maybe even, because of past experience, they're able to spot the complex indicators.
Sure.
It rolls over in their mind and says to their conscious mind, which is kind of stupid relative to the complex pattern matching part, and says, hey, dude, bad weather coming. And that old codger says it out to you, and you take note of it. Sure enough, there's bad weather.
Yep.
Now, is the guy psychic? Well, that actually, that's perhaps a distinction with no difference whatsoever for us. And it doesn't matter if they are, or if they're just really good at aggregating past experience and then applying it to current conditions.
Okay.
Now, we've been pretty good with weather because we're sensitized to that. Some of this other stuff that's been coming out, we've been reluctant to put it out there because of the emotional painting